Victor, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate you taking the time to have a conversation with me. Would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Yeah, so I am Viktor Barati. I was born and raised in Hungary, but moved to Netherlands for 5 years, and now moved to Ireland for economic and political reasons. Um, I'm a test automation engineer. So what I do is I work for software companies and try to that the product does what it's supposed to do and in the correct performance, and try to understand and the complex interactions between them and try to find ways it can go wrong. I don't have any shows, or I didn't do any public things so far. This first time. I'm basically just a regular dude who likes to talk about his friends with philosophy, economics, spirituality, politics, and all kinds of various issues. What I was noticing is that a lot of people are having a very negative view about capitalism and free markets, and they have a very distorted understanding about that. I would wanted to join a discussion about the reasons about that, address those. That I'm hoping that you would challenge some of my ideas, because really I watch lots of and you are really heavy-handed and very good at attacking different flaws and analyses of people about theism and conspiracy theories and any kind of things. But it seems that for economic and politics, you are a little bit less critical, or maybe that's because you're not interested or don't do much knowledge about them. But I would really like to challenge my views about capitalism and free markets. So that's the basic.
All right. I mean, I also agree with capitalism, so I'd essentially just be playing devil's advocate and finding communist, socialist, whatever different criticisms of capitalism. But sure, go for it. What do you think are the main things that you advocate for in capitalism and why you think it's successful?
One of the first things I would like to note is that when most people criticize economic systems and politics, or basically anything, they really don't define their own definitions. They don't clear what they are criticizing and what they are advocating for. And I would just like to note this, that if anybody listens to somebody who criticizes something without definitions, that is a huge red flag, that maybe that person is not the most knowledgeable. So I would like to start
I disagree with that part. Just to clarify, most people use standardized definitions in debate, so you don't usually need to give definitions for everything. It's kind of pointless. The only time you would need to give a definition is if someone specifically asked you, how do you define that? Then you would need to give a definition. But normally you shouldn't need to, unless you're using words in a non-standard way.
Yeah, but lots of different topics, especially with politics and economic system, I found out that people have a very it's not really a main understanding about what a specific thing means.
Then you would have the burden to ask them, how do you define that or something. But typically in debates, you would just interpret any word in the most general possible way.
Yeah, that's valid. That's valid. Okay. So my definition of capital, it's an economic system where the means of production is owned by individuals, and the government stays out of business overall, and doesn't have any rules about how people conduct their business, what they trade with each other, and doesn't the government doesn't have rules about money and monetary policy. Now,
so that would be like laissez-faire capitalism, like super. So just to clarify, you're defining capitalism as like okay.
Kind of fair capitalism, but what I want to point out here is that I started with that capitalism is an economic system, and that is important because it's economic systems tell you about the rules of the economy, how do you start monetary policies, what you can allow to buy, and for what price, if or if it's things like this. And it is really important because there are lots of things affect our lives and affect how a country is run, which are out policies, which are also just the protection of rights is separate from economy, I think. The acquirer role and the inheritance of power. So whether if it's elections or blood inheritance or like that, that is separate from economic power. Also social norms, where we ostracize each other based on lighting or any other kind of stuff is outside of economy. Lots of other different things. But why I want to point this out is because lots of the times when I hear criticisms about capitalism, I hear problems that are actually outside of scope of any economic system because they are related to either the protection of basic human rights or just social norms or individual choice. So yeah, and the other part is why definitions are important is because if you get definition or accept my definition of capitalism is that government doesn't have any power over markets and business, then it's seeable that no current government or any other government in history had this kind of system. So when somebody is trying to criticize current systems, whether it's in the US or Europe or historical system, and they criticize capitalism, they in which part of that system they actually criticize, because as you know, probably, I think you agree, we have mixed economies all around. And if somebody just criticizes a global issue or just a grander issue about an economy, they might actually criticize something that is the part that is outside of capitalism, which capitalism actually help about.
Well, normally the criticisms about capitalism are normally that it leaves a large portion of the population with a disproportionate level of poverty. That's the argument normally, that that the wealth is concentrated at the top, that they are not obligated under capitalism to do anything to help the people in poverty. And so it's not as equitable a system, and that's normally the criticism.
Yeah, there is that, and I agree. I was saying that a large portion of criticism I hear about is about the other things, but what you told is actually also a significant amount of criticism capitalism gets.
Wait, what are the other criticisms? You said there's other criticisms? You said there's other criticisms that you hear about capitalism. What are the other ones?
Yeah. So like that it leads to cronyism, it's lobbying, monopolies, that it's even leads to slavery or other things like that.
Those are all the same.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, so I mean, the argument is that there's a large concentration of wealth. Monopolies and cronyism and slavery are all examples of large centralization of wealth at one end and then large disproportionate wealth on the other end. And those are just examples of that. So that's still the same criticism that capitalism causes disproportionate wealth at one end and disproportionate poverty on the other. And examples of this occurring would be like slavery, because they're in such poverty they can't do anything, or because there's so much wealth at one end, you can have crony capitalism and monopolies that take over on the other. And those are just examples of the same criticism.
Well, from a very high point, that is true. But if somebody actually starts to dig down the causes and the different effects of those, I think are actually separate issues. So for slavery is really just a simple, like whether human rights are protected or not, whether you can be sold or your freedom can be sold or not, or just appropriated or not. And if human rights are protected, the basic human rights are protected, you can have capitalism and then slavery is just not allowed. Like, the part about monopoly and cronyism is a different issue, because that is, so monopolies are when the government says either that you cannot buy from a specific person or you must buy from a specific person. These are two specific rules the government can create to limit business. And some part of the cronyism or lobbying is true that aims for these, but some other part of the cronyism or lobbyism doesn't have to do anything with monopolies. Want to get a better position, want to drive out competition. The root cause of the two is both that politicians have power over government. And my point with this is that if markets are actually free, and government doesn't have any power over making rules about business, then monopolies exist because government cannot tell you who to buy from. And also lobbying.
That part's wrong. If you eliminate, say, all regulation from the government, then their monopolies will always pop up. It's like in nature, the predators, there's going to be an apex predator that nothing else can
but that's
compete
different.
with.
The market is different than monopolies. So monopoly means usually, like, that's also like a term that's like it's a distorted usage. It has a distorted usage.
No. So that's irrelevant here. The point here is that there's always going to be one company that's going to get an advantage, and they're going to use that advantage to monopolize. Yeah. They're going to take over, and there's nothing you can do to stop them. If they're bigger than the government, then there's no government. Then they will take
if there's
over.
No government, that the only means that company go get those benefits and become the apex predator.
No. There will be the government doesn't create apex predators. Nature creates apex predators. The government will never be. Stop. So there's going to be an apex predator that will happen with or without a government. Government makes no difference here. And so when they get into a position of power, the companies will use that power to monopolize the market. So that's going to happen without government intervention.
With that power,
what they're going to use their apex predator position to take up all of the resources they can and all of the profits they can, which would be to buy out all of the opposing companies, the competing companies, to underprice the competing companies, like what we see in America. They're going to use the power that they have to push out competitors. They will have a monopoly without any government involved.
If you want to define monopoly this way, then right, but that monopoly is not something that the consumers doesn't have a power over, because all the power that these apex predators in a free system without government is because they provide a better service and people choose them. And people
No,
always you have
no,
the
they can
choice to
provide a worse service. So if they have enough control over the market and provide a worse service, but can just buy out any competitors, like what happened to Oakley, the glasses company, then it doesn't matter the quality of their product if they have enough power to be able to prevent any other competing company from being able to enter the market
how can you
by
prevent
outpricing them.
me, like if you're Oakley, how can you prevent me from creating a new sunglasses company that sells a cheaper product?
Because I can just buy you. I can
But
buy the markets in your area.
okay, but if I don't want to sell my company to you, if I'm an angry customer who wants to get cheap
Then I can buy your building.
sunglasses, not necessarily.
There's
If
like
I have a proper
this is just
contract,
very basic. Like if there is no government, monopolies will win 100%. There's no way to stop that. There is literally that is necessarily going to happen. Free markets can never prevent that.
But they already did in the history of times. Like that, most of the
Never,
people
zero
always
times.
bring up monopolies for great oil, but great it had 98% of market share about light provision, but then came Edison and gave electricity to people, just pushed down large oil by a huge amount.
I have no idea what you're talking about right now.
Also,
Like markets don't solve monopolies ever. They can never solve monopolies.
yeah, they did. Or people also did that, like you can do anything about Facebook or YouTube, and there came TikTok, there came Instagram, there came lots of different services that now people, especially young people, use more than the other platforms. Like it happens that new companies arise, and even if somebody has 99% of the market share, they just lose much of that or even disappear completely.
No. So another monopoly taking over for a previous monopoly isn't solving monopolies.
Like TikTok is not solving, like didn't become a monopoly. Instagram didn't become a monopoly. Edison didn't become a monopoly, but they threw down the previous market dominance.
By replacing it with a new market dominance. Having one not monopoly take over a different monopoly isn't solving monopolies. The problem is the monopolies. Even in those systems, there is still a disproportionate concentration of wealth in the small percentage with a disproportionate level of poverty and hard to enter into the field on the other end. So it doesn't matter what you're saying that, oh, a different monopoly came over. It's irrelevant. It's still a monopoly.
Okay, so now I think we're a little bit conflating two issues, because one issue is the concentration of wealth, or let's say that the inequality of wealth, whether that's an issue, and the other issue is that they have singular decision power over the market, whether they have any singular power over the market or not. Because these are
those are two different
things.
issues. But so like if you have a pride of lions, lions have one male lion and then a bunch of female lions. If a different male lion comes and chases off the current male lion, that hasn't changed the monopoly. It's still a monopoly. Still one person who has control over the entire market.
Yeah, but even in those in the lion parts, so I'm not really sure about lions, but I know chimpanzees that like just because like you are the largest and most strongest doesn't mean that the whole group will accept you, and you still need to be friends with lots of others, and like you never have like a to impose your will upon others. And this is also true with the monopolies, that even that some company has like a 99% market share, that doesn't mean that they can do what they want no matter, because the customers and the consumers and any other business that just will make always come and change what I'm saying is that if you focus on imposing their will on somebody else, that is not the case, because it's the will of the consumers and also for anybody else that can come up and arise.
Yeah, that's wrong. That's just patently wrong. So like everything about that is wrong.
Like many times,
monopoly is just having enough control that you can disproportionately influence the outcome. You don't need to have 100%. Like no one cares if you have literally 100% of everything.
Sure.
And whether you can do anything literally doesn't matter. We don't care if you can do anything. Obviously, I can't charge $1 billion for a piece of corn. No one can buy it. No one cares. The point is that if you have enough control where you can disproportionately influence the prices of the products to outcompete any market, and you can make people pay what you want, and they don't have the option to pay lower prices, you have a monopoly. That's all it requires. And that happens every single time. This is just a law of nature. This is going to happen. By any natural standard, this is going to happen. So if there isn't a government force to prevent that, it will happen. There will be a monopoly. Necessarily, it's going to happen. It will not ever be stopped by markets, ever. Markets will create them. That's just nature. Nature creates them. And so the point of governments is to prevent that from happening. And you can't prevent it without a government force, because nature causes it to happen. Nature is the free market is what causes them.
I'm not sure that actually happens. Like,
see, this is like, again, just a law of nature. This is a law of nature.
Like, okay, but
chat, I don't give a shit if monopolies could survive governments. That's not the point here. The point here is that you need a government or something like it to prevent monopolies. And if there is no government, monopolies are 100% guaranteed to occur. This isn't about whether or not they can survive where governments are bad. I don't care. That's not part of the argument.
But I mean that now we conflate there can be like a good monopoly. Like we might think that, I don't know, there are some companies which share 90% of the market, and they are good for us because they provide us a good service.
No, that's wrong. Again, the point here isn't like, maybe there could be a benevolent person who has a monopoly, but the point is we don't want people to have monopolies because they can abuse their power whenever they want, and power corrupts every time.
But that's
so there are zero good examples of monopolies.
But I think there are. Like, I mean that there are lots of different companies that dominate the market, and like General Oil, the price of the oil fell every year and was much cheaper than their competitors, even if they shared their 99% of the market. Like YouTube is essentially giving its product for free, was providing it for free all the time. Now you have to get some, but like, I don't. Can you bring an actual bad example? Like, maybe that would help. Like, what do you mean?
Those have government regulations. All of those have government regulations making them not bad. So those aren't a monopoly of a company because they don't have control over the market. The governments have control over the market. So those are examples of governments making them good.
When they made the new laws, when General Oil in the, I don't know, 1800s or 1700s was having the largest market share, and the government made rules about monopolies. It was after Edison invented electricity and General Oil stocks and market share.
Governments already had other rules that made regulations on pollution rates, on other kinds of rates, tax rates. There's already lots of rules there.
In the 1800s for General Oil, like it had the 99% of the market share.
I don't care about the market share. The market share isn't what matters. Who had control over what happened? It was the government. The government decided what was going to happen. Whether the amount of market share is irrelevant here. The thing is they had control. They had control over the environment. They had control over the market. Those things are fine. Those things are that's what makes it not a monopoly, because they don't have control. If they can do whatever they want, pollute whatever they want, charge whatever they want, send gangs of people to kill their competitors, they have a monopoly then. Having a government to prevent that is what we need.
That's a different thing. Like, so that's again why I said is that why my what I'm advocating for is a kind of capitalism where the government protects your basic human rights, so people cannot send you gangs of thugs, and also that your neighbor cannot just dump trash on your own garden, which also means that they cannot pollute your air. That's protecting your basic property and basic health rights. But that's
again,
different
to do that, you need money. You need more money than the company. You need more power than the company. So if the company has a monopoly over everything and you have less power than the company, less money than the company, they can hire a bigger military than you can. But that's a separate issue. The point here is that monopolies will occur without government intervention. That's the argument. The current argument is monopolies will occur without government intervention necessarily. So you need government intervention to try to prevent it. And there are no, and the fact that a monopoly could be good for some amount of time is irrelevant. We don't care. We don't want that. We don't want a monopoly, not because they can abuse power. The fact that there might be one good monopoly, the tendency will be to abuse power. And so any system that allows monopolies is necessarily bad.
So the current systems are bad?
Yes.
They're not free markets.
They allow for monopolies.
But then, like, I'm not even sure how can you avoid any kind of monopolies ever without, I don't know, sci-fi stuff.
There are lots of things, like we have laws that can prevent monopolies. We just don't. So they're like, the American system has the ability to prevent and break up monopolies. We just don't.
That's again a different issue. So now what you're saying is that one part, we need to protect people from the abusive powers of large companies, which is like protecting their human rights, which we already do. And the other part is that you say that you want to break up companies that have, like, I don't know, a 90% market share.
No, absolutely none of that had anything to do with my point. My point was that without a government, monopolies will always occur. Free markets cannot prevent monopolies. That was the point. And that the fact that there might be one good monopoly for a short period of time is not an argument that monopolies are okay, because the vast majority will not be good. The tendency will be to not good. Therefore, we don't want a system that allows monopolies.
The majority of current monopolies that already happened were like not bad.
Care. No, I don't care about monopolies that already happened. That's irrelevant to the point. The point is that without government, monopolies will happen.
The majority of monopolies will not be benevolent and will not be okay, and it will be destructive. But that's not what we see currently.
No. I don't have any idea what you're talking about. So the argument is no government will lead to monopolies. That's the argument. Do you disagree with that argument?
Depending on what you mean by monopoly, I still like it's a little bit conflated. That does it mean that it can oppose the company's will to the larger society against their own will?
None of that's a part of the definition of monopoly. Monopoly just means they have control over all of the market.
But all of the markets, like, does it mean that all of the market is all of economy, or like their own markets, like what they produce?
Whatever their product is.
But just, I want to a little bit refine here. So they have control over the control means that they can do anything.
This shouldn't be hard. So will a single entity take over the vast majority of an industry if there is nothing to stop them?
Okay, yes. That's fine. Okay, that's fine. Take over, that's fine. But I don't think that's necessarily by itself a problem if they just take over a market.
Okay, it is. I'm telling you, by a fact of reality, that is a huge problem. That is a massive problem. We never ever want that to happen.
Tell me an example. Like what you mean, because I think that maybe
literally every military power in the human history ever. Alexander the Great, Attila the Hun.
Okay, that's military power.
The Muslims.
But not talking about
the Crusades. That's exactly what we're talking about. That's literally exactly what we're talking about. When a market takes over the vast majority of resources, the British Empire, they use that to take over stuff. Any competent company who recognizes that they have a resource they want to protect will
Company,
then buy a military and then
do you think
use the military.
it was not a company?
Yes, it was. That's exactly what it was. Like the British East Indies, I think that's what it's called, the British East Indies, whatever the ship company was that hired pirates and crusaders to go kill all their competitors so that they could trade money. Yeah, that's a company. Companies will buy guns if they can and use them to increase profits. Literally, lots of companies in America have done that in South America. East India
What
Trading
you're
Company.
saying,
Thank you.
basically, that if you allow monopolies, then companies get too rich, can outbuy the government's protective forces.
Yes, that's one of the parts. The other parts are that if they get too rich, they can unfairly price things. They can be unfair. They will be unfair because that's the human tendency. Rich people
Yeah,
are
but
unfair.
they don't like if we protect human rights and we say that if human rights are protected and the government cannot meddle in business, cannot make new laws, they cannot stop anybody from creating new companies, then no matter how much market power one person has, you can always start your own company if your property rights are protected
No, that's
and
just false.
your
We know that's false. Like we know that in order to start a company and the processes to start a company are very complicated and getting the right resources are complicated. They can undercut your resources. So like if you're trying to buy glasses and you're trying to like get something from a gas, say you're a glasses company and you need to buy materials to make the glasses and the bigger company just buys out all the glasses, glass manufacturers services, you get no products. They have now bought all of the consumer, the pieces required to make the glasses, and you can do nothing.
Forever, like that's theoretically possible, but that's not really like something that people
has
can
literally happened in history multiple times.
When?
All kinds of times. You just Google that one. I'm not an expert on the history, but that's literally something companies do all the time, literally every day, all over the world. That's what they do. That's why there's tariffs in governments.
Well, tariffs are not a really good thing, but yeah, I will need to research that how that works. But I like you can get some kind of other like plastic or like they cannot have enough money to buy everything out like that you are completely out of business. Otherwise, they come out of business because they run out of money.
Well, they only need to buy out the better product. So like if you're trying to build jets or whatever and they buy all the titanium and you have to make aluminum jets, you lose 100% of the time. Your jets are now worthless.
The titanium, like that's just
what? Yes, they can, because there's actually a very limited amount of titanium that can be made, and you can buy all of the manufacturing plants for all of the titanium. You're done.
Yeah, but
that's it.
Like medical parts will not be created, and all kinds of other businesses.
No. They're buying the titanium plants, and then dictating where it goes to. So they can just say, "I own the plant now, and you're not going to get any." Oops.
Well, if that the titanium plant wants to sell them, like, but that's not something that doesn't have a like. If government uses force on you, you cannot have a say. Nobody can have a say on that, in a sense. But when what you're saying is that the monopolies have power. The titanium have a say. The people who sell the glass have a say. The people who buy the eyeglasses have a say. Like all kinds of different people have a say.
None of them have a say because they want money, and the monopoly has so much more money.
You still have a choice. Like
that's not a stupid argument.
Like lots of people.
Stupid argument. Like there are poor people. They have a choice to get a job with a minimum wage job. Well, no, they have a choice of either starving or getting a job. So they don't really have a choice. If one person has a disproportionate amount of the wealth,
they have a choice to go out of society and just start their own farm. Like it's a much worse choice, but they have a choice.
gas chamber or the firing squad isn't a choice. So when we say choice, we want to say there's a good choice.
That isn't a choice because somebody's actually forced.
Irrelevant. It's irrelevant to the topic. Irrelevant to the topic. So the topic here is that if someone has a disproportionate amount of the wealth and the power, like a monopoly, and the titanium plant owner has a choice to sell his titanium plant because he's going to make a lot of money, he's going to do it. That's a good choice for him. But it's a bad choice for the other company who's trying to buy titanium, because they now lose the access to the titanium because it's now a private titanium company that's owned by this glasses company, who then also can resell it to medical places. But then the competitors go out of business because that one company has so much more money that they can give good options to all their other competitors, that are the resource management firms, and outsell the competitor completely. So this is bad. This is very bad. And this is just one example. There are literally tens of thousands of ways companies can do this and do this in lots of ways imaginable. This is like shipping routes. You can monopolize shipping routes. You can monopolize different train routes. You can monopolize all kinds of things and control them if you have a monopoly. Monopolies are not good. They're terrible. They're bad. They're always bad. They can be manipulated in many, many different ways. And if someone has a monopoly and you don't have a government, you lose.
But that's okay. So just because we lose now in the mixed economy where people are having hardships to start in, and the government gives you lots of obstacles to start that, like, that's not necessarily an argument against free markets. It's that, yeah, if people cannot start businesses, then yeah, that's what will happen. But would be the case.
The argument for a mixed economy is that the government takes a portion of the wealth from the companies and redistributes it to the poor people through healthcare, social services, education, etc.
One part of the mixed economy. The other part is the regulations that you're talking about.
Yeah, the regulations are like EPA, preventing people from dumping oil into rivers and stuff. And so that's, yes. So we need that too.
Not necessarily. If somebody owns the rivers, then they will not want to dump they will not want anybody else to dump their shit on it. And it's like the case currently that the private areas are much better protected than government-owned. Like all the sold forests in Amazonas, or all the trash that is dumped into river is actually dumped into government property. But private properties are the cleanest in the whole world. And
no.
Yeah.
No. In America, where they have private property laws and the private citizens can sue the governments or sue the companies, that's where they're the most protected. But if you go to anywhere in the world where you don't have the right to sue another company, and they can just simply dump stuff.
Right to sue is part of the protective rights. I agree. You need that. You need a proper protective rights and proper
and a legal system and money to do it.
Yeah, sure. But you don't need government to control business for that. You just need amount of tax, which is currently the military, the police, and the jurisdictional system is like.
There needs to be laws. There needs to be laws that says it's illegal to dump oil into water being used by people, or they can do it, or there's nothing to sue, because suing only works if it's something illegal. They've done something to cause you harm that's illegal. If it's legal, then there's nothing to sue. So suing only works if there are laws placed by the government to prevent things from happening that are being broken.
Yeah. Okay, but what I mean is you can do that with just simply protecting property. If they protect your property and nobody can dump trash on your property, then that is done. They don't have other regulations to do that. They just need to say that people's property needs to be protected, and you cannot dump any shit on it.
That makes zero sense. Like, so pollution into the air and the water isn't your property unless you own that part of the river. The fact that it goes into your part, like,
it gets into your part of the river, into your part of the air, then yeah, it is part of your property.
That makes absolutely no sense. There's zero. The only places in the world that provide those protections are ones with governments. Without governments, that protection is never provided. Without government regulation, those are never provided.
For that, like let's say there was in the early Americans, there was some really interesting law about river protection, where all the rivers are privatized, and then different parts of the people have different laws about what means that if somebody pollutes upstream, that how does that affect the people lowerstream, and that can be done with just simple property protection.
No, it can't, because they tried that. That was the beaver hunting laws and the damming of the rivers and catching of fish on one side and another side and affecting different homesteaders. There was lots of problems with that, and they realized it didn't work. Literally didn't work, so they had to make a government to go in there and manage those things.
There.
What?
I mean, what are the problems there? But can you like actually?
So, like, say I own the top of the river and I just put a dam there, or a fish net that catches all the fish, and there are fishermen down the river, they now starve.
Yeah.
And so saying that, oh, no, you must allow X amount of fish to come through, or you must allow X amount of water to come through. Those are government regulations that need to be implemented.
Well,
enforced by a government.
If you buy a property, a river from somebody else, let's say.
Well, I just bought my property and the river that runs through my property.
Yeah, sure, but you have certain rights to that part of the river. So if somebody like builds a dam, and that actually the property that runs through, like that part of the river runs through you, is like not the same as before, and that is because of the action of the person upstream. So that person actually damaged your property. Like,
yeah, which means you need a government to say, here are the regulations that say, here's the amount you can do this, here's the amount you can fish, here's the amount you can't fish, and here's what we're going to regulate. So they need regulations.
With the contract when you buy the river, which states all of these things, that you buy it from somebody, and then.
No, your contract doesn't include all of the people down the river. They didn't all work together to write the contract. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, somebody has the river in the first place. Let's say the government, and when they privatize the river, then the government should be creating proper contracts.
Regulations, like lots of regulations, economic regulations. That's what they're called. Yes, I agree. Which means not free capitalism. It means regulations. Government with regulations.
Well, contracts not necessarily are regulations, and because of the problem is that the government can come up with a new guy, and that person, if somebody either pays enough or just is a very good friend, they can rewrite the regulations the way they want. But if you have a contract, when you buy the property, that contract law, and that cannot be overwritten by the government, or should not be overwritten by the government in a free market.
That's a terrible idea. That's an absolutely terrible idea, because you can get people to sign contracts they don't understand all the time, and that happens.
Yeah, but that's fine with me. I mean, that's like if you convince stupid people to do stupid stuff, but the government cannot protect you from that. Like
that's like one of the whole points of the government. That's why pyramid schemes are illegal.
The point that the government wants to sell, but it doesn't actually happen in the real time. Like people still do stupid shit as much as they want.
Right, but the point of the government and the regulations is to prevent as much of the stupid shit as possible. That's why we made monopolies and MLMs, hopefully MLMs, illegal, because people are stupid, and then they're going to invest in those things, in monopolies, or not monopolies. What is it? Pyramid schemes. Pyramid schemes are illegal because even though it's completely a consensual contract, you need regulations to prevent the stupid stuff.
Yeah, but this also makes people not think, because what they do is that when the next pyramid scheme type thing comes, which there won't be a law yet, people will say that, oh, this thing is legal, so it is definitely not a problem for me, and I don't need to think about what I say.
That's an irrelevant different topic. The point here is that it's better to have a government to assess whether or not these things are good or bad and to regulate them. People are stupid and are going to do stupid things no matter what, but you need a government there to regulate the bad things as much as possible. And if you don't have that, stop. stop.
Sure.
So if you have a system which allows for whatever consensual contracts you can come up with, and they come up with consensual contracts that are complicated and sound good to some people, but really are just a way to steal their money, and they agree to them, that's bad, and we should prevent that by making regulations and having a government to oversee what appropriate kinds of economic transactions there should be. And that's a better system.
If that system can work, and you're just not supposing that if we want that system to work, it will work. Like, just because we say that that's what we want to prevent does not necessarily mean that we actually prevent all these things happening.
We do. That's why we like fire or what is it? Prosecute pyramid schemes all the time. Every year they get prosecuted. There was a really big one that was just prosecuted on a guy who sold tennis shoes this year. So the fact that we prevent 100% of them doesn't matter. Do we prevent more of them than are prevented under a laissez-faire capitalistic system? Yes, that's what matters. We prevent more of them, and we prevent them from becoming monopolies, because if they weren't prevented, they would continue to grow and gain more and more power. So we need to prevent them and try to kill them at all instances as much as possible. That's what we have a government for. And so the only thing that matters here is, will a government prevent more of them than a laissez-faire capitalist system? And the answer is yes.
I'm not necessarily convinced about that, but probably need to research about how much that happens currently. And
pyramid schemes? They happen a lot.
I know. Okay. Yeah, I know it all happens. I just want to actually look at like countries which doesn't protect for them, and countries which protect for them, and like compare the two, that how much of them are actually prevented in the laws that we have, and what kind of other problems, like, because one side is that, okay, I might give you that there are some problems where the government actually reduces some of the risks that people can have, or people can be made uninformed decisions. But at the same time, these government regulations cause also a lot of issues where the people are also make uninformed decisions, or just simply cannot allow to do business which for some specific reason falls under these regulations but would actually benefit everybody. And that we also have lots and lots of different examples that, as you say, it's really complicated and hard to create a business, and we don't know that how much new competition and good products and cheaper products would come up, or any kind of services, even lawyer services, where you are protecting your customers from cheating and uninformed decisions. Like, cheating would be normally protected under capitalism, because if somebody says something false in a contract, that's cheating and that's unlawful. But like, uninformed contracts could be somewhat mitigated by a cheap lawyers, and lawyers are currently expensive because of the huge amounts of rules and regulations that there are.
There just wouldn't be lawyers if it was a free market system. You just wouldn't have them, except for rich people. Only rich people would have them, but that's a separate topic. So there are obviously regulations for licensing. You have to have a license to be a doctor or whatever, and
or even a hairdresser nowadays.
What?
Even a hairdresser nowadays. Lots of states.
Yeah, but that takes like you can get those in like a week. Those aren't like a super huge bar. But the point here is that yes, there are regulations for certain things to have some level of qualification before you do them, and that does create a barrier to entry. And if we want to know if that barrier to entry causes negative side effects, we can just compare it to other countries that don't have these regulations and see which ones have a higher quality service. So medical care, for example, you need to have a doctorate to become a doctor and that takes a lot of money. And does the health in this system, is it better? We have a better life expectancy, better healthcare than other systems that don't have that? The answer is yes. The systems that have the absolute best healthcare are the ones that have the most stringent PhD requirements. So the fact that adding in PhD requirements actually increases the quality of service.
But those PhD requirements can also come just by the free market. So there are lots of different industries. I know about like software engineering, because that's where I work, is that the different companies make their own standards, and actually there come free market solutions for certification, for validation, for rating, and all these kinds of things where the free market is people to actually like pay for somebody else to rate a doctor, or like only then go to certain professionals that have a certain free market certification, but that doesn't necessarily need disallow any other people from working.
There's no such thing as free market certification. Like back when there was no regulation on healthcare, you had snake oil salesmen and people offering all kinds of stuff.
Healthcare is right now controlled by all government, but all other industries, they have lots and lots of different private.
No, none of that's irrelevant. That's irrelevant. So if we go back into America's time period with healthcare, before there was regulations of doctors, anybody could be a doctor. Anybody could do whatever kind of medicine or healing they wanted. And there wasn't a private system evaluating which ones worked and which ones didn't. It was just whoever was near you who claimed to be a doctor is who you went to, because that's what people did. And that was a bad, terrible system. We needed somebody to go around and be like, nope, you're not allowed to be a doctor because you don't have the qualifications. We needed somebody to test to find out if someone could actually do what they were saying they could do, and not have false advertising and have false advertising laws. And that's a good thing. It's good to have It's good to have a government to be able to evaluate whether or not someone can actually do what they're claiming to do, and not have some kind of just free market system where they get paid money whether they're good at it or not. It's irrelevant. That's a bad system. We know that's a bad system because that's what religion is. All religion is just false advertising, but people get sucked into the trap because of it's appealing to them. So having a government to evaluate whether they can actually do what they're saying they can do, it's a very important thing that we absolutely want, and we don't want a free market system for that.
Then why do you think that works totally fine in like software engineering?
I don't know if it works fine in software engineering. I just know it works. It works as a government system for lots of things that makes the entire world better. If it works, it doesn't need to 100% work for everything. It just needs to work for the most important things, which it does.
And would you agree that like just looking at the history of the old US system, where technology and medical technologies were totally different, and human wealth and access to information was totally different, is little bit distorts the analysis that licensing improves healthcare. Like, because at the same time we also increase technology and also increase the people's wealth, or like the economy increased people's wealth. They increased each other's wealth and had much more money to get proper medical health. So not necessarily saying that it invalidates anything, just saying that it definitely distorts the analysis whether the increase in healthcare was because of or increase on the quality of healthcare was because of licensing or other factors.
Well, so that wouldn't make a difference to the analysis, because we know there's equally as silly people here today in a modern society that buy junk healthcare stuff. So like there's GNC is just an entire building full of mostly junk, and it's $1 billion a year industry, but they still have to have regulations with a little strip on it that says this is not for medical purposes or whatever. And even with that strip, they're still used. There are sugar pills that are James Randi James Randi shows them on one of his lecture thingies, which was pretty funny. Like, these already exist, and if they were allowed to be marketed as legitimate medicine and didn't have a government who required that they must be tested in a medical environment to be able to establish whether or not they could be effective at whatever they're claiming to do, like the FDA, then the amount of misinformation and misapprehension of the public of the effectiveness of these drugs would be significantly worse than they are with the FDA actually requiring regulations on these things. And so the fact that we have regulations today in our society with infinite access to information would be worse without that, because more people would be sucked into these kinds of GNC solutions of alternative medicines that we know for a fact don't work.
Not sure. Like that's. I think it's like, well, it seems like that's an assumption because we don't really have good examples against that.
What's the assumption there? Like, people buy silly alternative medicine. If we didn't have a government regulating that they can't use silly alternative medicine for real medicine, and they claimed it was real medicine, more people would try it and buy it. What's the assumption there?
Yeah, that more people would buy it, and they will because currently, if the drug comes out and your doctor, like the doctor doesn't even need to check whether that new pill is actually the one that works for you or not. Now they need to just follow the regulations and what is the government appointed drug for this specific problem, and they don't actually take the care, actually take any effort into looking into whether that drug is actually good for you or not. If there wouldn't be like a government appointed drug for a specific problem, the doctor would need to be actually looking your specific case. You would need to find a doctor that has a good reputation, not just one that's appointed to you. People like lots of people would have some bad outcomes. People would take a lot more care into their own choices of drugs and the choices of doctors.
No, that would definitely not happen. That's literally the opposite of everything we've ever seen in all of human history. People don't take more care if there aren't government regulations. People take less care. That's the opposite of what happens. People don't take more responsibility when the government stops doing things. They take less responsibility because they don't want it.
What do you base this on? Do you have any specific examples for this?
All of human history. Like, that's like, why is Singapore the cleanest country or the cleanest city? Because they have lots and lots of laws where people can't get punished and for like having gum. It's illegal to have gum. The fact that governments have regulations to clean things makes things clean. Why are all of the parks in Minnesota very clean? Because the government cleans them. The people don't. If the government stops cleaning them, they get dirty. Why is that? The homeless camps get cleaned. The homeless camps are there, and they get cleaned by government employees who clean them. Like, obviously, the government is doing lots of things to clean stuff up that wasn't clean before and wouldn't be clean without them.
Do you know about if you brought up some Eastern stuff, about the private rhino reserves in South Africa, that in 1956, I think there was like 100 rhinos in South Africa, but then they privatized the land, and the private owners started to breed the rhinos to sell it for hunters, to sell it for tourists, to sell it for other people, and they protected those rhinos and the environment much better than the government, who didn't have actually money. They had a monetary interest to make profits of those rhinos, and because more rhinos make more money, they bred those rhinos, and the cleaner environment made more tourist money in the environment much better than the government before.
Yeah, but for what about areas that aren't going to have tourists? No one's going to pay to clean it. The point of the government is going to pay to clean every area for every people. Stop. The government does things. Nope, stop. The government does things that capitalist companies don't want to do. The government will do things that people they'll help people that things that people don't care about. That's the point of the government. The things that people do care about, obviously companies are going to invest in areas that make them profit, but most areas won't make them profit. That's why we see like the UPS service, which gives mail to everywhere in the country. Amazon doesn't give mail to the vast majority of places that the UPS goes because there's just not enough people there. It's not profitable for them, but the government still provides those. So the point of the government is to provide services to people that are not going to be benefited by private companies because it's not worth the money. So the whole point of government services is to be at cost, to do things that people don't want, like build roads to places that are like unprofitable, to take care of those roads, to build bridges in places with not a lot of population. Companies are never going to do that because it's not profitable. So yes, there are definitely cases in which companies can make profit and they're going to take care of the things that benefit their profit, but they're not going to take care of everybody. They just don't care about everybody else.
Sure.
And so in order to have a balanced system to take care of the people who aren't going to build profit, you need a government.
Okay, so so what I want to say is that if there is an area nobody cares about, I don't think we should spend any money on heading up that area. Like if nobody cares
about the people who live there.
But if the people who live there, then they should spend their money to get to in that area. Like why? Like if I want to go to some very far place to live my own fantasy dreamland because I want to get away from other people, or just I don't want to move away from the country I was born in. Like why can I force other people to pay for my convenience or pay for the things that are valuable for me? Like,
well, there's lots of reasons. So like if you have a government and the government says there's this group of people over here around the lake and nobody cares about the lake. Nobody's taking care of it. Nobody's building bike paths or light posts or roads around it. We're going to do that. We're going to do all these social services. And then the place becomes really nice. And they're like, oh, this is a really nice place to live. And people start to buy homes and build cities and things because someone took care of the land and it was nice. It's a nice place to live now. And so these governments building these cities and taking care of the property, like in Minnesota, the reason the housing prices are so high in Minnesota is because the government takes care of everything. They take care of the roads. They take care of the streets. They have nice bike paths. It's very pretty. It's very ergonomic and centric. And because of that, it increased the property of the land.
Yeah, but if the land has a potential, then the free market is a solution for that.
It's not. No.
Buy land, just as they bought the rhinos in South Africa and their land because they said that I can make money off 20, 30, 40 years, which is the government is very rarely doing. Government is really only looking for a month years because of term limits.
No. Pre-market systems don't go around saying, oh, look, we can build up lakes and stuff and build bike trails. And then in 20 years, more people will buy houses here. Like, no, they don't do that. Governments do that. Governments like the only things that do that.
No, there are many people who develop houses for like the next 30 years and then sell it for other people. Like that's literally happens. Like people buy lands which has nothing, no water, no electricity, nothing. And they start building up, like spend 5-10 years, many amounts of money to build houses and then have the risk of, okay, can I actually sell this house to somebody? And that happens all around.
No. So like a private company is going to go to an abandoned piece of land where there is nobody and just buy it out and clean it. Whereas the government's going to go to places where people already live and need services like water and electricity and roads, and they're going to build them there to help the people. And then this location where the people are already at is going to grow in wealth, and people are going to live there, and it's going to increase the quality of life of that location. And it's going to increase the quality of life of the poor people who were there, who needed all those services. The rich people are just going to buy empty land and just build it up for themselves. So this does nothing to help all of the other people who lived in this one city, even though both have equal opportunity to be grown, because nobody wants to help the poor people except the government. So the government helping them is going to have equal opportunity to grow the land and make it profitable, but also help the poor people who live there. Whereas the private companies are like, we don't care about them at all. We're just going to pick an empty plot of land where we can just develop on our own. So no, there's not an equivalent system there. But we've been going for about an hour, so I got to get ready for another one coming up.
Okay. Thank you very much. It was useful. I had lots of research.
Do you have any links or references you want to give people?
No, not yet. As I said, I don't have any online presence yet, but maybe in the future we'll see.
All right, cool. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. Talk to you later.
Yeah.